Hi, this is Brett Ingram, entrepreneur and award-winning product creator, and today I want to share with you how to discover the hidden profits in your business. So look, every single successful business in its simplest form makes more money than it spends. We need to earn a profit by having our sales and revenue exceed our expenses, because otherwise we go out of business and we have a hobby instead of a business, right? So if there was a way to unlock hidden profits, extra revenue and profit that we aren't currently generating, it makes logical sense to do that, right? Well, the good news is that every business, no matter what industry or geographic location or anything else, has hidden profits buried in it. The question is, how do we find them? And then how do we benefit from them? So when we think of assets, when we think of business assets, right, what normally comes to mind? Physical or tangible assets are normally the things that we think about. So it's things like inventory or equipment or vehicles or maybe a land or building or machinery or maybe even like cash and, capital, financial capital and things like that. But in the reality, our businesses actually have a lot more assets than that. There are a lot of intangibles that because we work in our businesses every day, we take them for granted, yet we're benefiting from them every single day. And the interesting thing about this is a lot of that is because as we go through business and as we conduct our daily operations, we come up with ideas, we come up with tweaks and sort of different ways and mechanisms to do the things that we need to do. And a lot of times those things are translatable, but they're things that when we do them ourselves, we take them for granted because it's important to our business and that's just the way that we do things. So anything from like advertising or promotional pitches, once that stuff is created, if it worked, even if we aren't currently using it anymore, an advertising or promotional pitch has value if it was successful. Processes for doing nearly any business function. So whether or not you've developed a process for, your social media marketing, or you have a process for inventory control or whatever it is, all of those business processes are things that are intangible assets. They're things that we've sort of learned by doing the process of going through business and conducting business and realizing, hey, in order to make this happen, I've got to do this, right? Any kind of money saving or money making hacks. A lot of times, again, these are sort of second nature. They might just be incorporated into what we do on a daily basis, whether we're doing it all ourselves or whether we have a staff. If there are various different things that they're learning or doing, then those things sort of become automatic and become ingrained in the culture of the company. But they might not necessarily be things that we even quantify or write down or approach in a certain systematic way. Nonetheless, they're assets anyway. Any sort of proprietary or unique tactics or techniques. So anything we've developed to do anything inside of our business, whether we have a dog grooming salon and we found a really clever way to get them to sit still to cut their nails or whatever it is, any kind of thing that we've got are all assets. Now, they don't all have the same value. Obviously, certain assets are going to be more valuable than others. And there's a whole host of other things. Those are just one group of intangible assets. And we're going to get into a more detailed list of exactly what these assets are and how to find them in a minute. But first, I want to make sure it's makes total sense that, for all of our intangible assets, where the rubber meets the road and why this is really valuable and important, because you might say, well, yeah, okay, I have a process for doing this, but so what? I'm already using it, so there's no benefit there. Well, actually there is, because all of our intangible assets, especially any of them that we do really well, so anything that provides a real unique value or significant benefits, or if it's unique to our business or our company or our industry or whatever, there are other businesses, whether they're in our niche or completely different industries, that could benefit from them too. So the uptake here, the upshot here, is that we can license the use of our intangible assets to other businesses for a fee. And that benefits them because it gives them a process, or it gives them a tactic, or it gives them something unique that they weren't using before. It gives them an additional benefit, and it unlocks hidden and possibly and probably recurring profits for us. Because if we license it on an ongoing basis, if it's not a one and done type of a deal, particularly if it's something that's like sales generating, then we can get a percentage going forward, or a licensing fee going forward every week, every month, whatever it is. And the beautiful thing about licensing agreements is that they require very little work to set up. They, generate nearly 100% profit, and they can pay us over and over and over for months and years to come. And the other benefit is that we can license each of these assets to multiple businesses. Depending on the specific arrangement, you may not be able to go to another business in the same industry in the same geographic location, because if that destroys the competitive advantage you gave to the one business, they might not be okay with that. But you can go to other geographies, you can go to other industries. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And if the agreement isn't exclusive to them, you could still go to their competitors and other things like that as well. So you have the ability to license these to multiple businesses. So what that means is that it's scalable. There's virtually no limit to how much extra profit we can unlock. Now, if you're wondering, but can you really do licensing? Like, does this really work? Well, if you've ever seen an episode of Shark Tank, you know for a fact that it works. Because oftentimes what happens is the sharks will see an idea, and if they don't want to go all in on the idea, one of the things that they'll offer to do, or if they don't like the owner who's selling it, but they like the idea, they'll offer to license it. So either they take the license and they're able to use their own resources to use it to market stuff, and they give the person a percentage, or vice versa. What they could do is they could say, well, I have this network that you can tap into, and I want a licensing fee. I'm not going to get involved in your business. I'm going to set you up with the right people. I'm going to step back, and you're going to pay me a fee for months and years to come. And it's not often thought of as a way to generate revenue, and particularly for small businesses, they often feel like, well, I don't have anything to offer. I don't really have any assets. I don't have anything that I can license. I don't have any patents. Well, they don't actually need to be patents. They don't need to be anything that's so proprietary that someone else couldn't figure it out. It's just the fact that they did. If you think about this in the context of coaching for a minute, right? So if you go and you get a coach or a mentor, and it doesn't matter what walk of life, let's say I want to get super fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go hire a personal trainer. Is there anything that that personal trainer is going to share with me that I couldn't find on my own if I looked it up? Is there anything that personal trainer is going to be able to do for me that if I set up my own routine, I got some, workout and bodybuilding things online, and I studied diet and all these other things I couldn't put together myself? No. The science of biomechanics of weightlifting, working out, fitness are pretty well established. Every occasionally there's a new tweak or there's a new wrinkle that comes out. But for the most part, other than new supplements and things like that coming out, since the beginning of time, people know you lift weights, you get stronger, right? When I was a kid and I was really into working out, I went and got a bodybuilding encyclopedia that was chapter after chapter, one chapter for each of the 8 Mr. Olympias. At the time, there were only 8 Mr. Olympias, and each one shared their entire workout. Well, I can tell you from going through it, there was a lot of overlap in a lot of them. These guys were all at the top of their game. They all had won the most prestigious bodybuilding competition in the world in their own time frame, yet they had some nuances and some stuff they did differently, but a lot of the stuff, the basic idea of lifting a ton of weight, exercising and balancing it with nutrition and sleep and all the stuff you need to build muscle, is all the same for everybody. And so the thing is, so why do people hire personal trainers though? Because they're in demand. People pay money every single day for personal trainers. The reason is because it's a shortcut. The reason is it eliminates trial and error. The reason is it gives you motivation, and it gives you a clear sense that you're on the right path and you know the direction that you're going in, as opposed to trying to go it alone. Well, the licensing agreements are no different. We need to start to think of our businesses in a far higher light than most of us do. You know, just because we do a certain thing a certain way doesn't mean everybody does it, or doesn't mean everybody could figure it out to do it that way. You know, one of the things I pride myself on is running very lean. You know, I don't do a lot of excess stuff or a lot of excess work. I don't have a lot of unwieldy or complicated processes. I try to distill everything down into the most efficient, simplest, cheapest way to do it. So that way I can be very streamlined. I can adjust really quickly and all of that. I don't ever consider my own business from the perspective of licensing. And I actually should, because the fact is, there are a lot of things that I do on a daily basis that if I had the time to then go and offer in a licensing capacity, I know would be valued. Because the amount of stuff I'm able to accomplish with the tiny footprint that I have is pretty astounding when I stop and I think about it. You know, I can essentially run multiple full-time things in one full-time opportunity because of the fact that I've got it set up in such a way that it's streamlined, simplified, and there's not a lot of waste or excess. So any of those kinds of things that you have in your business, any of those kinds of things that you, when you really stop to think about it, are all things that you could consider for licensing. So what specifically are these assets? Let's get into some examples, and then let's talk about how would we actually set up a licensing agreement then, right? So even if I've got these ideas, how do I go ahead and set that stuff up? Well, some of the examples are in terms of advertising and marketing. This stuff, very low-hanging fruit, because advertising and marketing is such an easy sell because of the fact that it generates revenue. So it's very easy to license something if you have a particular copy. Maybe you have ad copy that worked really well. Maybe you keep using it, maybe you don't. Again, back to my business, I have emails that I've used through email marketing, and I use those same headlines and same body over and over and over for the handful of them that I have that are really good, and they work every single time because I've developed that. I have a lot that didn't work, so those I don't reuse. But every time I find one that's really good, I put it in sort of a swipe file, and I create a file for that. And so if you have any kind of ad copy, if you have any kind of ad campaigns or marketing or promotional campaigns that you've run that were successful. Now you might be thinking, but if I've already run it, I mean, what good? Well, somebody else can apply it to their business. Somebody else can apply it to what they're doing. You might not be able to use it anymore in your own business, depending on the circumstance. That doesn't mean it isn't valuable to somebody else. Particularly sales techniques. So years ago, I worked for a company that sold insurance. And we basically did accidental death and dismemberment and life insurance. And we did it for union members. And, you know, one of the things that we did in terms of our pitch, it was the same pitch for every person, every sales rep, to every client. It was 4 pages, single-spaced, 12-point font, typed out script. And it was a 4-page document that I promise you was one of the most effective sales techniques I've ever seen. I guarantee that's something that took them years to develop and tweak. It covers all the objections that people come up with. It covers, you know, all the benefits that they're going to get. And it weaves it in a narrative way where you're in a conversation with the client. And all you're doing in the back of your mind is you're going through this 4-page script in your head, and you're basically going through it. But to them, it feels like you're in a conversation. And it was a brilliant, brilliant sales technique. 4 pieces of paper, right? To them, I'm sure they recognize the value because it made them, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. But the fact of the matter is, that's something that if they were to sell it to other companies in similar or parallel industries, would be worth a fortune because of how effective it was. It makes every salesperson you have on your entire force that much more effective because the closing rate was so high using that particular technique. Any kind of closing tactics. You know, if there's particular things that you do, One of the guys in the same business, same industry, had a really clever way of getting an appointment. When he was on the phone and he was talking to somebody, and they would say, "Oh, I don't want to be sold. I don't want, I don't want you to." He said, "The last thing I'm going to do is sell something to you." And then when he got in the house and he did the pitch, the very last thing you did at the end of the pitch was sell it to them. So he was being very literal, and what they were hearing is, "You're not going to sell me anything." He wasn't lying. He was 100% honest. It just was two different perceptions of the same thing. Really, really clever tactic. That's something, again, you could use to help people close appointments to get in the door, right? Any kind of concepts or processes or hacks, right? So if you have a concept that you've developed for something of the way that you do things, whether it's a social media marketing concept of building your brand, whether it's some sort of a branding concept or marketing or inventory control, whatever it is, any kind of concept even. It can be theoretical, but if it's something that would give somebody a framework that they could use and apply to their business, there's value in that. Processes are very big. Hacks, anything that lets people do more in a streamlined way. So examples of processes and hacks are things like productivity. If there's something you could do that cuts down the waste, cuts down the limited amount of time, that's the thing that I specialize in, right? So anything that you're doing where you looked at a process, it used to start and it used to take this long, and now you've got it down to this long. Again, for your business, that might be great. And you might think, well, I don't know how this translates, but thinking about it from a higher level, that process could probably be incorporated in other people's businesses in a similar way. Maybe an inventory management process that helps you manage your inventory a little bit better or whatever. Anything that's cost savings, or revenue generating. So anything you have that saves your company money, and it's a savings over what you would have done or what you would have had to do, those are all real benefits. One of the big examples of this online is that ShipStation.com. They're always pushing that. Oh, it saves you money on your shipping because it automatically calculates what the best method to ship your product is based on where it's going. So it gives you the cheapest dollar value. All that is software that basically taps into the databases of the shippers, calculates the rate, and spits it out for you. But that's something that people are paying lots of money to have. And they're essentially almost in a licensing model doing that. So cost savings, maybe it's a hiring process. Hiring can be a nightmare for people. I was in staffing for years, and it's really, really difficult. If you have ways that you can help people, I did a podcast episode about outsourcing and hiring the right way with outsourcing because I had tons of headaches with that. And I've developed a process. I developed a way to vet candidates and screen candidates so I get a better return on my investment, and I have a much higher successful hire rate than I used to when I really struggled with it. Onboarding, anything where you're bringing people into the company. If there's a process you have, you set it up in this system, you give them A, B, C, and D, and boom, they're up and running in 2 days instead of a week. Boom, that's a cost savings for any company. They'd be interested in that. Maybe a social media marketing process where you found the optimal way of when to post, what content to create, and exactly how to do it in a fast, simple, streamlined way. So any of those kinds of things. In addition to all of that kind of stuff, your customer base. Your customer base are loyal to you. They bought from you. So that's something you can leverage by offering to pitch other people's products to your customers if you believe in the product or things like that. Your prospects, same idea, right? You have a prospect list that's bigger than your customer list. Well, you could cross-pitch other people's stuff in there, and you could license that to them. You could license them the list if you've asked for permission from the prospects, but you could also do it the other way where you pitch the stuff to them through yourself where they already have a relationship with you and you get paid for that. Maybe you have a sales force where the sales force can be utilized for other companies as well to sell similar types of products. And you could say, we'll give out a leaflet for your thing, or we'll give this extra 30-second pitch about your thing. Every lead you generate, like we want a percentage or whatever. Relationships are something a lot of people overlook. If you've been in business any period of time, you have relationships, maybe with suppliers or big, important, highly leverageable customers. the advertising media, maybe social media influencers, brands, manufacturers, distributors. Any of those things are super valuable. Again, back to the Shark Tank example, what do they lean on all the time? I can tap you into my distributor network. I can tap you into my retail network. They aren't doing anything. They've done the work to establish that network, and all they're doing is plugging you into it, and they're getting paid. Same idea. If you've been doing this in any length of time, you have people at your disposal that you've developed relationships with. That doesn't come overnight. Those relationships can be leveraged in a way that's win-win. It helps the person that you know, and it helps the person that you're licensing to. So anything else that you can think of that could benefit other businesses that you currently do in your business is all something that you could potentially license. Once you have some assets to license, what you want to do is approach prospective licensees by offering them the no-risk benefit. So you always want to approach them from the perspective of, I have something for you, and then if it works, then I get paid. That way there's no risk for them, and there's an incentive for them to do it. So for example, you could say, I have an idea to increase your sales and profits, and I'm not asking for anything up front to do it for you. I'm going to go ahead and go in, and I'm going to do these things. It's all congruent with your branding and all that. It's all legal, ethical. For every dollar I bring in an extra profit that you didn't get through your normal business operations, you just give me 25%. Any rational business owner is going to be open to that. You know, they may or may not eventually agree to a deal, but they're going to listen. Because the fact is, everybody wants to make more sales. And if you're telling me you're going to bring more money in the door than what I've got already, and you only want 25% of it, why wouldn't I listen? Right? And then you can get into the details. The key is, don't reveal the techniques for how you're going to do that in advance. You don't ever share the process up front or the intangible asset that you're going to license up front. You get the agreement in place, and then be sure that it covers non-disclosure so they can't copy it or go share it, and future sales so they don't cut you out after 2 weeks and start doing it themselves. Other than that, it's real simple. Like anything, it's a numbers game. The concept works, and it's used every single day. If you're serious and you're committed to it, you can use it and profit from it too, and it's a great way to unlock hidden profits in your business. So the takeaway here is, we all have intangible assets in our businesses that we take for granted. It just takes a bit of thinking and creativity to uncover them. These assets would be very valuable to other businesses. So if we license the use of them, we can create extra profit with little effort or expense, and we can license each asset to multiple businesses on a recurring fee basis so we can maximize our own business profitability.